on was a question about whether or not the U.S. will, his administration will investigate Google for its search practices that he was complaining about earlier today on Twitter. He stopped short of saying committing to an investigation, but did ramp up the rhetoric, saying Google, Facebook, and Twitter are all treading on what he called very, very troubling territory, saying that these companies have taken advantage of thousands. So we did see a sort of tick up on his rhetoric aimed at what is really a key sector of the U.S. economy right now.
You mentioned Senator John McCain's dear friend, Senator Lindsey Graham, on the Senate floor. We were glued to, every word of it. So let me just play, in case anyone missed it. Here's just a piece of the South Carolina senator just really remembering and honoring his best friend.
He had wanted to be president. He was prepared to be president, but it was not his to have. And I remember, above all else, the speech he gave that night. John taught us how to lose. When you go throughout the world, people remember his concession speech as much as anything else. There are so many countries where you can't afford to lose because they kill you. And John said that night, President Obama is now my president. So he healed the nation at a time he was hurt. I learned that serving a cause greater than yourself hurts. Anybody in the military can tell you the risk you take. He couldn't put his jacket on. He couldn't comb his hair because he got hurt serving a cause greater than himself.
So emotional, Margaret, and you just can't help but note the contrast between Senator Graham and how he's feeling toward, this American hero, his dear friend, and the reaction from the White House.
Well, and Brooke, we're going to see several more days of this now with the events unfolding, the actual official events now that will be unfolding in Arizona, and then of course making their way along with Senator McCain here to Washington, to the cathedral, and ultimately to his interment. So President Trump is going to either have to come to terms with the accolades or change the subject, or both, and I think we're seeing a little bit of that with his decision to just go ahead, put the flags at half-mast yesterday, make the statements he's made, and then try to turn to topics like, the economy or soccer or the internet. It has been a losing proposition to try to hold back full and emotional support for Senator McCain and his legacy.
Another potentially losing proposition, their high hopes on North Korea and denuclearization. Josh, to you, what is going on with that?
Yeah, well, first I just wanted to say something quick about Senator Graham and Senator McCain. I had the privilege to travel with them around the world about a half a dozen times, and I witnessed the bond of brotherhood that they felt, but also Lindsey Graham saw John McCain as a mentor, as someone who could teach other senators and really other countrymen about the impact that one senator can have and the impact that America can have around the world. And that's a mission that John McCain was dedicated to, that Lindsey Graham, I'm sure, will continue. On North Korea, it's kind of a mess. We're at a stalemate right now. The North Koreans are accusing the United States of backing away from the talks, and the United States is accusing the North Koreans from backing away from the talks. I reported yesterday, and CNN confirmed this morning, that North Korean Vice Chairman Kim Yong-chol sent a letter to Pompeo complaining about America, and that was why Trump canceled Pompeo's trip to North Korea. And now we're kind of in a holding pattern, and it could go one of two ways. Either both sides could move back towards each other, and we could get this diplomacy started again, or they could both walk away from each other and ramp up the rhetoric. And what that leads to is a bunch of really bad scenarios for both North Korea, the United States, and the region.
Speaking of the president, we now have the tape. Michael Bender, you were there. Let's watch.
In soccer we have right? And they have cards.
Ooh.
Yellow cards and red cards.
Yeah.
Yellow card is a warning.
Right.
And when you want to kick out someone, you should win that.
That's true. Right. That's very good.
So this could be useful, I don't know.
Yeah, I like that.
That's for you.
I like that.
The next media session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Carlos. Congratulations. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, the wall will be paid for very easily by Mexico. It'll ultimately be paid for by Mexico. Yeah, I think Google is really taking advantage of a lot of people, and I think that's a very serious thing, and it's a very serious charge. I think what Google and what others are doing, if you look at what's going on at Twitter, if you look at what's going on in Facebook, they better be careful, because you can't do that to people. You can't do it. We have literally thousands and thousands of complaints coming in, and you just can't do that. So I think that Google and Twitter and Facebook, they're really treading on very, very troubled territory, and they have to be careful. It's not fair to large portions of the population. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Press, make your way out. We're finished here. Let's go. Make your way out. We're finished. Let's go. Keep going. Let's go. Keep going. Raquel, we're finished. Let's go.
So Michael Bender, on his, we know the president was up early this morning tweeting about Google and saying that, it's political and the search results, and Google's responded, saying no. But what do you think, bigger picture, what's the president trying to do there? Is it, to Margaret's point, turn the page on the conversation this week? How do you read that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that, and to be fair to this president, this is someone who's always trying to push the envelope on news, always trying to drive another and a different headline, a new headline, not really mattering if the last one was bad or good, right? I mean, there's a lot of good news, as the president has spoken about, that this White House views as good news on the economy, that they rarely give time to breathe before the president is making news on the next subject. So I think that's sort of a lot just his MO. And the big picture here on this particular issue is I think this is how he truly feels about some of these social media companies right now. He does feel that the good news out of this administration is being suppressed. He obviously views the media as playing a role in that. He views social media as playing a role in that. And there is some irony of a president who has driven so much news using his own social media platforms, now complaining that these platforms aren't doing enough to help him.
Last question, Margaret, over to you on the Attorney General and Jeff Sessions. We know that, he put that statement out into last week, sticking up for himself. The Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell just said this moments ago.
There seems to be renewed interest, including by some members of your conference, in the job that Attorney General Sessions is doing. Does he still have your confidence? Do you still think he's doing a good job in that role?
Yeah, I have total confidence in the Attorney General. I think he ought to stay exactly where he is.
Total confidence, Margaret. It's different from what we heard from Senator Graham when he was, on TV this morning. And we've asked so many times, are his days limited? But are his days limited?
Well, Mitch McConnell would like to get a Supreme Court justice confirmed first and try to hang on to Republican control of both chambers if possible. It would make everything a lot easier for the Republicans next year, and he's trying to keep members from losing their jobs, and Republican leaders are concerned that any move on Sessions now ahead of midterms could create a real wild card situation that would not be good for them and could jeopardize, this very important confirmation. So I think that's what that's about. Come back in mid-November and let's see where the quote stands. But for McConnell's perspective, he has always tried to walk that fine line between not encouraging President Trump to do things that defy presidential norms, but not antagonizing him and creating more chaos that could create additional drama, because the pressure always ends up falling on the lawmakers who are running for office. It doesn't seem to stick to the president himself.
We'll talk again then about that in November. Margaret and Josh and Michael, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Coming up next, Stormy Daniels gets the full Vogue treatment with designer clothes, famous photographer, the writer who sat down with Stormy Daniels and her lawyer, in a New York hotel room is with me, are photographed by celebrity photographer Annie Leibovitz and gracing the pages of High Fashion's Bible Vogue magazine. This is, shall we say, a far cry from the film sets where she was once an adult film star or the strip clubs where she now dances. It is a bit closer to the look she dons for her media appearances outside courthouses where she is suing the President of the United States and his one-time lawyer Michael Cohen over keeping quiet about an alleged affair. Daniels is getting the Royal Vogue treatment in a gown by a designer who refuses to dress the First Lady. The article is called Stormy Daniels Isn't Backing Down, and with me now, Amy Chozick, who wrote the Vogue piece.